Story recapped here. Today I'm gonna explain a drama, fantasy, and horror film called The Power. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. Somewhere in East London in 1974, Nurse Val suddenly wakes up from a dream. She then washes her face and prepares for work, saying a short prayer before finally leaving. Trade unions and the government are at war at that time, and the economy is in crisis. At the same time, blackouts have been ordered to conserve power, leaving the nation in darkness every night. Upon reaching the East London Royal Infirmary, Val immediately goes to the head office, where Matron interviews her. Matron wants to know why Val requested pediatrics, but she isn't impressed by the nurse's answer. After a few more questions, Matron asks Val where she'll be staying. Then, Val says she's hoping for a place in the halls, revealing that she has no family and that she grew up in the children's home. After that, Matron tells Val all the rules she needs to follow, reminding the nurse that she won't keep her if she doesn't fit. Val familiarizes herself with the hospital, and she immediately goes to her station at the gynae ward to work. Shortly after, she almost gets into an argument with the janitor when he tries lifting her skirt. Then, she gets a chance to talk to some of her fellow nurses, who want to know what it's like in the children's home. They also ask Val if she's coming to the union meeting the next day. But before she can answer, Terry complains that no one listens to a bunch of girls. Curious, Val asks what it's like there when the power's out, and Terry resentfully says that a place where people die in should never be allowed to get that dark. Later on, Val finds a girl in the nurse's restroom and takes her back to the pediatric ward. There, Val learns that the girl's name is Saba, and she immediately goes to her bed after the doctor tells her to. Val then asks the man if he is Dr. Franklin, saying she saw his paper and agrees with him that slums kill children. Because of that, Franklin asks Matron if Val can stay with them, and the woman reluctantly agrees. Moments later, Franklin checks Saba's condition and asks for Val's opinion about the girl's state. Although she's hesitant at first, Val eventually answers and impresses the doctor, but Matron isn't that thrilled. Since Saba has rickets, Franklin decides not to let the girl go home that night and says she's coming to Central with him. Val then asks the doctor if Saba is one of his case studies, and after saying yes, Franklin excuses himself to talk to a senior. Once Franklin walks away, Val talks to Saba and learns she's 13 years old. The girl then asks if Val will come with her to Central, but Val apologetically informs her she isn't working that evening. Then, Saba looks at Matron with worried eyes, so Val assures her she'll be fine as long as she does as she's told. However, as they talk, Val suddenly hears a whisper from the storage room and decides to close it. Later on, everyone leaves the pediatric ward except for Matron and Val. Matron immediately scolds Val for undermining her in public, so the trainee nurse apologizes and says it wasn't her intention. But unfortunately, Matron orders Val to clean the ward and stay for the dark shift, ignoring her protests. Following Matron's orders, Val cleans the ward and gets scared when the door to the storage room slowly opens. However, she decides to be brave and check it, and as she approaches the room, she smells something bad. She then tries and fails to turn on the light, and when she turns her back to the room, a soft wind suddenly blows her away. But although she's startled, Val simply leaves and doesn't make a big deal out of it. Moments later, Val comes across Franklin, who learned that she's staying for the dark shift. Then, Matron assigns Val to intensive care, informing her it'll be powered by generators just like antenatal. At the same time, Matron reminds Val to stay on the ward unless essential, adding that it'll be very dark. However, Val is left panicking in the hallway once the power gets cut, so she immediately lights her lamp, and as she walks along the dark corridor, she can't help but remember a man. Then, Val once again smells something bad on her way to intensive care, and unfortunately, she reaches the wrong level and ends up on antenatal. Luckily, one of the nurses, Comfort, offers to take Val to the right level, and as she waits, she looks at the photos of the patients on the wall. The two nurses finally reach the right level a few minutes later, and Comfort tells Val to be assertive before leaving. Then, Val finally arrives at the intensive care ward and sees an acquaintance, Barbara. The two talk about the routine in the ward, and as Val tends to one of the patients, she notices the dirt on the man's hand that came from the vent. After that, Val asks Barbara about the scent she keeps smelling, saying it's like something's burning, but the woman doesn't really answer her question. Then, Barbara mentions Franklin and implies that Val likes him, so the new nurse quickly denies it. Pissed, Barbara informs Val that he's taken and sweet on her, but their conversation is cut short when the lights suddenly go out. With no other choice, Barbara takes Val's lamp and leaves to check what's wrong with the generators. Meanwhile, Val stays behind to read their patient's medical records. However, she gets scared when she sees the reflection of an unknown figure in the glass, but it immediately disappears. Although she's afraid, Val decides to investigate and becomes even more frightened when her candle is suddenly blown out. As if that isn't enough, an unseen force pulls her back, causing her to lose her balance and drop her candle. Then, the power finally comes back on, and as she tries to understand what just happened, Barbara returns with a security guard, Nev. Val immediately asks Barbara if she pulled her over, but the woman makes it clear she couldn't have done that. At the same time, Nev assures Val she'll be okay. Moments later, Nev lends Val his lamp before having fun with Barbara by dancing to some music. Then, the two start acting inappropriately, with Barbara dancing on top of the table. However, they soon stop when they notice that Val is watching them, and Barbara gets emotional once Nev leaves, so Val gives her a cup of tea. But when Barbara asks why she's being nice to her, the new girl replies that nurses have to look after people, whoever they are. Unfortunately, Barbara takes Val's comment the wrong way and feels like she's acting high and mighty. She also asks Val why she couldn't keep her mouth shut about a particular man, but Val simply tells Barbara they should be friends since they're grown-ups now. Annoyed, Barbara orders Val to go downstairs and get some med charts, ignoring the new nurse's protests. Left with no option, Val braves the dark and goes downstairs, where she is startled by Nev. The guy is locking all the exits, so he offers to walk Val to where she's going. They then drop by Nev's office to get some fuel for his lamp, and upon doing so, he asks Val to get inside. However, Val refuses and quickly leaves, provoking Nev to insult her. Unfortunately, an unseen force lifts Val's skirt in the hallway, causing her to run away until she ends up in the basement. There, she finds a burnt stuffed toy, but before she can touch it, an invisible force drags her away and pins her against the wall. Then suddenly, Val has a vision about someone burning, Barbara getting attacked from behind, and a girl in a burnt room. Later on, Val finds herself back in the intensive care ward with a toy, but she can't see Barbara anywhere. So, Val immediately picks up the phone and informs Terry and Comfort about it. However, as she talks, she suddenly coughs and spits out dirt in her hand. Moments later, Comfort and Terry arrive, and Val tells them she's been attacked. However, Val can't identify the attacker, causing Terry to doubt her, especially because she's heard some stories about the new nurse. Comfort then says maybe Val should just go home and rest, but Val is certain that Matron will never have her back if she leaves. Frustrated, Val simply says that it's possible she just imagined things, admitting she's not very good with the dark and adding that nothing happened to her. Then, they hear a loud noise from the corridor as they talk, so Comfort leaves to check what it is and comes back with Saba. Later on, Val takes Saba to bed and tells her she can't keep running away. Then, Val checks Saba's notebook and sees her dark illustrations, asking the girl if she's scared of something. However, before Saba can answer, Comfort interrupts them and tells Val not to get too attached to their patients. After a while, Val gets attacked again, and she suddenly starts acting as if she's being possessed. Terry and Comfort try their best to help Val as she thrashes around, her body contorting, and the nurse only stops when Saba holds her hand. After a while, Comfort checks Val's condition and asks if she has epilepsy, but Terry says that's not what that was. Comfort then excuses herself to call for help, while on the other hand, Terry notices the bruises on Val's neck. A bit agitated, Terry decides to leave and ignores Comfort's protests, saying she'll get out through a window since the doors are locked. Meanwhile, Saba goes near Val, so Comfort orders her to move away from the new nurse. After that, Comfort instructs Val to go home, so Val reveals that something did happen to her and tries showing Comfort her bruises. However, Comfort tells Val there's nothing on her neck and assures her she's okay. Unfortunately, as she's about to go, Val sees a ghost of a kid reflected in the glass, who immediately possesses her. It isn't long before Val stabs her thigh with a pair of scissors, so Comfort quickly comes to her aid. Later on, Val regains consciousness and finds herself in a dark hallway. She then sees Saba and calls her, but the girl just continues to walk away. However, Val also sees someone following Saba into a room, so she quickly goes there to find the girl. Moments later, Val eventually finds Saba and tries to protect her from the same ghost she saw earlier. Unfortunately, the ghost comes after them, so Val desperately tries to stop it by grabbing it by the neck, only to see that she's choking Saba. Then, Val finally wakes up and realizes she just had a nightmare. When Val looks around and sees Saba, she tells the girl not to go near her and leave. However, Val feels guilty and calls her back, asking to see the picture Saba is holding. Saba then says the girl at the back is Dirty Gale, implying that the girl is bad news. Frustrated, Val confronts Comfort about Gale, determined to know who she is and saying the ghost is responsible responsible for what's happening to her. With no other choice, Comfort reveals that Gail was also from the children's home, adding that she ran away and didn't die. However, Val mentions she found the girl's toy in the basement and starts looking for it, but Barbara suddenly comes out of the dark and grabs her. Barbara has been blinded, and with everything that's happening, Comfort starts to believe that Val is a danger there. She then locks Val in a dark room, even though the new girl repeatedly says it's not her fault. And as Val looks around, she fails to see the hand trying to touch her. Seconds later, Val gets a whiff of the burning scent again, and she suddenly hears several voices whispering all at once. Then, someone suddenly grabs her, so Val dives back to the intensive care ward through the glass window. Once again possessed, Val slowly approaches Saba, but Comfort picks up a syringe and orders her to move away from the girl. Then, Val drinks a bottle of medicine and spits it on Comfort, also stabbing her with the syringe the nurse is about to use on her. On the other hand, Barbara keeps talking to Gail as she staggers out of the room, so Val follows her outside. Barbara continues talking to Gail and says she'll tell everyone what he did, implying that a man has wronged the girl. Meanwhile, Comfort tries to let Saba escape through a window, but the girl is too scared to move, so Comfort attempts to climb down the window, but she just falls to the ground and crawls away. After that, a possessed Val walks towards Saba, but she suddenly stops and returns to normal when the girl calls her name. Later on, Val gives Saba her necklace and tells her she needs to leave, saying Gail is using her because the girl can see right through her. At the same time, Val gives Saba a pair of scissors, asking the patient to stab her if she gets possessed again and returns. Val then runs away and finds Barbara's body in the basement, realizing she's responsible for what happened to her. She also finds Nev's burnt body, suddenly remembering how she set him on fire. With no time to waste, Val takes Nev's keys and continues to run away, but Gail catches up to her and takes over her body again. Meanwhile, Saba is hiding under a patient's bed when Val comes back for her. Moments later, Val wakes up on the floor and finds the pair of scissors she gave Saba, thinking she might have killed the girl. Val also starts to lose it when she sees her comatose patient sitting up, so she takes several pills, thinking she's just hallucinating. Then, she finds the word "listen" carved on her abdomen, and that's when she sees Gail watching her. However, the girl doesn't harm Val, but instead shows her how she suffered at the hands of a hospital staff. After that, Val is eventually found by Franklin and another nurse. The next day, Saba visits Val as soon as she regains consciousness. Val then learns from Saba that Gail didn't want to hurt her, and in fact, hid her in a vent until morning. Saba also says Gail is the same as Val and her, but the doctor translating for Saba suddenly gets mad, saying the girl is lying. However, Saba manages to leave Val her bag before the doctor finally pulls her away. Later that day, the psychiatric consultant interviews Val about what happened, and she reveals that a patient was violated and killed in that hospital. She also adds that she thinks Barbara knew about it and that maybe Nev did it, but the consultant doesn't believe Val because she's known for making up stories. She once accused her headmaster of indecency and later admitted she was just lying, but Val chooses not to discuss that with the psychiatric consultant. Then, when the hospital chief prepares to leave, Val asks him to check the basement, saying she thinks Nev burned her body. However, the chief says they've never had a patient named Gail, causing Matron to look at him in disbelief. Exasperated, Val tells him she didn't make up the story about the headmaster, adding that the police and the nuns forced her to say she lied. It is then revealed that the headmaster would often violate Val in a dark room, explaining why she's so afraid of the dark. Unfortunately, Matron, the chief, and the psychiatric consultant aren't sure whether to believe Val or not. On the other hand, Franklin tells Val he'll visit her if it's allowed, and the new nurse asks him to make sure Saba is safe. Then, when she's alone, Val checks Saba's illustration and erases the dark shades, realizing the girl has been drawing Franklin. Knowing that Saba is in danger, Val escapes through the vent and catches up to Franklin and the girl. Franklin then instructs Saba to sit and wait for him while he takes Val back to the ward. And as they walk, the new nurse confronts the doctor. So Franklin takes Val to the basement while Saba seizes the opportunity to escape. In the basement, Franklin punches Val in the gut when she refuses to take off her robe. But despite that, Val is still determined to protect Saba and decides to turn off the light, asking Gail to possess her again. However, Gail doesn't show up, so Val is forced to hide from the doctor. Eventually, Franklin catches Val, but Saba suddenly arrives and distracts the doctor. Meanwhile, Gail finally possesses Val and tells Franklin he will listen to them before ceaselessly screaming, leaving the doctor dead in the basement. Later on, the chief receives a mysterious call from someone, blaming him for turning the hospital into a rotten place and telling him to think of the girls when it's dark. On the other hand, Matron lets Val and Saba escape, and Gail's spirit finally leaves with them.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.